All right, today I got Helen von Dadelszen on board, myself, Fredrik, and we're going to talk about something important, which is your voice, what you like to get across. We will talk about some tools that might be helpful for you as you try to pitch whatever that is in your life. And again, originally from New Zealand, how did you end up in the middle of Europe?
Hmm, That's a good question. Thanks for inviting me first, Frederick,
Pleasure.
onto your podcast. It was a not really a planned journey, I must say. I took the opportunity to come over to Europe, first to Scotland, where my mum was actually born, and found my way eventually to Italy, where I was teaching English, and then fell in love there. And my now ex-husband was moving to Switzerland for
Yeah.
work. So
Uh,
I sort of followed him and always been the sort of person to follow opportunities. So I've been open and I guess agile in my work
yeah.
and found opportunities everywhere. And now I've been here over 20 years near Geneva in Switzerland
Excellent.
and feel probably more European than a New Zealander, despite the lingering accent that I have.
There, there, there are no kiwis in the background. There might be a bird upside down if you use your imagination there with the art, but you never know. So, to keep people on their toes, we got people from all over the world, and thank you, the audience, for coming back to us again. Uh, let's start with something actionable. Why does the voice really matter when you're communicating? And again, you listen to a podcast, obviously you care about the voice.
Absolutely. So, the voice or the way that we communicate with the world is our connection with people, in fact. And so, the voice in the global sense is your ideas, having your thoughts translated into something that someone else can understand, as well as your physical voice, the sounds that you're making. And so, I actually work on both parts of that, helping people overcome their nerves so that they are confident to speak and share their messages, as well as production of their voice so that their message is wrapped up in a nice package that is
Yeah.
congruent with the connection they want to make with the world.
No, that's really cool. I've been working with the voice as well in different contexts because, for example, I've been working with German experts, how they can be more extrovert. And German experts are usually not extrovert at
Mm-hmm.
all. And
Mm-hmm.
especially getting them to work with maybe their second language, which might be English, or working with my poor German. That's also another factor. So, why is it harder for some people to use their voice, starting with just the mindset inside before they even dare to express or use their voice at all? And now thinking holistically, if you don't want to speak, why why should you speak up?
I think there's so much going on in our minds
Yeah.
and social conditioning from very young, even told to be quiet or fit into a certain mold. Unfortunately, our school system is still quite archaic.
Yes.
And if you say the wrong thing or something that's different, you can be even punished for it. So, from a very young age, what I found with my clients is that a lot of them were put off. And I talk about them being stuck in a cage, they've caged their voice, whether that's stopped speaking out their ideas, sharing their knowledge, or also, in fact, with their vocal production, keeping it very, very small and restricted. And I really think that's just society. We're told to be one way, and so we can comply with that by playing smaller and being scared of sharing something that's different or new with the world. Because as we know, evolutionarily, if we are thrown out of the tribe, we essentially are left to our own devices, and it's not a very safe place. So our bodies haven't really caught up with the modern world, and if we someone doesn't like our idea, usually we're not thrown out of the tribe and we're not going to die immediately. However, that's what it feels like in our bodies.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, especially like public speaking can be like I rather kill myself or something in that direction. So a real power play for many leaders listening into this one. Actually, if you're an introvert and you listen first and you speak later, that's actually very, very powerful because often now, because of my role, like chief of staff, chief of operations, I am doing often the MC work. So I'm opening up and inviting other people to speak. I'm coordinating so that the leader of the whole organization, who's very senior, in this case, like a military general, who's also appointed by United Nations, can have the concluding remarks. In this case, he doesn't feel obliged to jump in all the time to comment. He's got his little notebook, he's taking notes, and you can do the same as a leader. So you don't need to talk the most. I try to monitor my ratio in the podcast, so I speak a lot less than my guest. And on that note, can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you ended up working with the voice as a concept, and one of the key reasons why people reach out to you? So where do you come from? Why are you an expert in how to play around with the voice in the business or social setting?
So I guess it begins back when I was a child and I was always involved in theatre. I was from a theatre family. And so I was just used to, I guess, performing, whether it was singing or acting. And it wasn't something that I really thought about much. It's just the family I was brought into.
Yes.
And then as I got involved in my career and got involved in different organizations, different roles, I realized that I had almost a superpower because I was able to communicate my ideas. Wasn't smarter than anyone else, but I had a way of managing my nervous system so that I could speak up and then I could package it in a good way. And so, long story short, I joined Toastmasters. Probably some of your audience would know Toastmasters, yes. A great organization where you can practice public speaking and leadership skills. And I loved it there. My parents are both Toastmasters, actually. And I fell into this beautiful club and I competed in different speech contests, etc., and found I was quite good at it. So yes. In 2017, I was made redundant from a job. And so I started exploring, could I create a role for myself? Could I support people professionally in helping them communicate better?
Yep. Yeah.
And so that's where that sort of started from. And I basically focus on more the humanitarian world because that's where I was working before. So that's the natural network that I had. And over the years, I've basically developed 2 areas of expertise that people come and see me for. I've already mentioned them. The first one is managing your nervous system. Yes. So confidence, managing stage fright, and everything that goes with that. And the second point is voice. And I find the voice really interesting because I learned singing as a young person, and something that we all have, but very few of us have learned anything about how to use our voice. Most of us don't like our voices, and it can actually make a huge difference if you have a voice or even a voice problem can really affect your career and your confidence. Yes. So it's sort of a loop.
Yeah. I was playing around with my own mind here in terms of like, what would really be the theme of this podcast, diving into your past? And I came up with thoughts like the voice is your asset, how to speak with courage before you feel ready, which is also an aspect that many people think about as well. So on that note, for people who listen to this, which is a clear majority of you, Helen is using not only her voice, but she's articulating, she's using her face, expressions, her hands, and she's very much engaging as a speaker, even if we now are doing this online. We both have been studying this from like how much the words versus the voice, the tonality, to the actual like body language. I've been working a lot with helping sales and sales leaders to communicate more clearly, and also executives. Why does the word actually not matter so much in terms of transferal of conviction in communication and speaking?
Well, I would say that the words that you use do matter.
Yes.
However, if you are not thinking about how they are presented,
Yes.
then you can come up with a situation where there's an incongruence. So the typical one I usually give is, I'm so happy to be here today. Right? You hear my voice, I'm not happy. So the audience automatically, it's a very human reaction, thinks, oh, there's something not right here. Right? There's an incongruence between the words and how it's said. However, if I say, I'm so happy to be here, then you actually feel like I'm being genuine.
Yes.
So the words are absolutely essential. If we don't have a message to share, if we don't craft our words well, then there's no point in packaging them nicely with a good voice and a good performance.
Yes.
In fact, you probably know a few people who are excellent communicators, but the content is kind of weak. It's a little bit of blah, blah, but it's beautifully packaged. And a lot of the time, you don't even realize until afterwards saying, oh, yeah, I love that. What did they say? Ah, yeah, it's actually not very clear. So you enjoyed the experience, but you didn't get
Yes.
the message. So I would say that there is a core to saying the right words, finding a message in a convincing, engaging way of communicating, but then packaging it can really level up how the audience engages and feels what you're saying in a congruent way.
Yeah, I think there must be some mind reading going on here because, again, I was just thinking about the line. You should never do that when you're listening attentively. Think about what you will say next. But one thing I really like to get across is when you speak to a person or an audience, it doesn't really matter that much, but it's really how do you make them feel?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do they feel like this is persons I can trust? Is this someone I like to see again? Is this someone I do not want to see again? We're very good with qualifying in or out, filtering like, okay, not not like, especially nowadays when it's like people are even swiping people because of first expression. I'm not into that game, at least not that I'm aware of. We probably are doing that with social media anyway, even if we're not talking about life partners here. So, why is this feeling, which is a mix of signals we pick up from so many different sensors around us, why is that so important in terms of communication?
Well, as I said, the communication is the way we connect with the world. And in fact,
Yeah.
that is exactly what I get my clients to think about when they're communicating. Before they figure out their beautiful metaphors, the stories, designing beautiful PowerPoint slides,
Yep.
I get them to understand who they're speaking to and what they want that audience to think, feel, or do. And in order for someone to do something like buy from you, you need them to think and feel something.
Yes.
And that's why that is so crucial, that piece. We're not communicated to in a vacuum. There's a lot going on. And
Yes.
the best communicators are able to understand who they're speaking to and get on the same page as them and gradually bring them to whatever transformation you're hoping to bring them. So I think it's
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah, no, I love that because again, ultimately, if you like to get anyone to align with you and your message, like put yourself in their shoes, like physically step over to their side to see it from their point of view. That's quite cool. And also in terms of like doing exercise with this, sometimes you might have people sitting against each other at the table and you try to get them to agree. It's green, no, it's red. Well, actually, if you step around and see the same card from their point of view, it is red from their side, while your side was green. So let's agree to disagree, or let's agree that the perspectives might have been different in the first place. So what's like your bigger game in terms of like how would you like to leave like a small dent on the world? How would you, in the best of worlds, influence for the better, whatever that might mean to you?
I love that question. What is really important to me is that smart people are able to share their knowledge and wisdom with the world. I think if we allowed and we were able to better communicate with each other, we would avoid a lot of issues that we have and actually advance much quicker in the development of those areas that we want to develop. So I think that's really the message, or what my, I guess, legacy, if you want, is to help people who have something to share with the world to be able to share it in a meaningful way.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's ultimately in a way to have a platform like we do right now, to have multiple really good people coming across, to meet with the audience from all over the world that they might never meet, but they're still having the chance to have an impact and influence, and people might take ideas from them. And I love that. So one key thing I find in communication is what is called framing. Can you help me to explain the aspect of what do I mean by framing, and how can that help people to communicate more effectively? You might have a framework for framing, or any ideas at all around that word itself, please.
So what comes to mind, particularly because it's something I've been working a lot with my clients recently on,
Get that?
is having frameworks to go to.
Yes.
So I love a framework because it makes us feel safe.
Yep.
Right, which is really important in terms of managing your nervous system and feeling confident in the communication. So people can use a framework to help them be clearer in their communications and more impactful. And it's also so useful for the audience because we feel things are packaged well.
Yes.
So probably for your audience, my favorite one, because I find it most applicable to so many different questions, people who are preparing for a panel discussion or a Q&A, all of these sort of things, speaking on the spot, where a lot of people feel very nervous because they think they can't prepare. I find this framework works in 90% of the cases. You've probably heard of it before. It's PrEP, P-R-E-P. So P is for point. You make your point. I think we should go ahead with option 2, straight off the bat, rather than finding your way after 13 minutes, you finally get to your point.
Yeah.
Put your point up front and center.
Yes.
Then follow that up with the R, which is the reason or the rationale. Now, this is really important, especially for very technical fields where, as we were talking before, they assume everyone knows the same things that they know, but you want to give the reasons. Right. So I think we should go ahead with option 2 because it's the most cost efficient and will have the biggest impact in the world. Okay, simply. Then the next step is to go and give an example or an illustration. So this could refer back to something that's similar. Last year we did something similar, and what we found was X amount of growth, blah, blah, blah. Right. So this is the example. You put some color into it to make sure everyone's on the same page, that you're talking about the same issue and illustrating. And then very simply, again, you repeat or paraphrase your point. And this is really powerful because often people find it difficult to finish and they sort of ramble on, and they're like, oh, I should probably finish. So I think that's all from me, rather than repeating very simply. That's why I believe we should go ahead with option 2. So this PrEP framework works really well in so many situations. It takes some practice, but there's nothing difficult about it. You can even, write on your notepad what the point is and follow it as you're talking if you're feeling really nervous.
Yeah.
So that's when you talk about framing, that's the one I go to.
I'll add an S to the PrEP so now it's preps. And the last is just stop rambling. So exactly what you said, like enough. Just like mic drop. Boom.
Mic drop. I love it. Preps. Great.
Yes. My co-host Charlie, who was with me for entrepreneur retreat many years ago in Bali with a guy called Roger Hamilton. Charlie was very young. I mean, no one below like 25 was on the course ever. And they were that like 12 and 14, my 2 sons. And Charlie became famous for mic drop Charlie. He had so many like clever comments that should not come from like a 12-year-old. So he was called mic drop. And that was actually how we had the first simple artwork for this channel, was actually a mic being dropped from Charlie. So yeah, let's
excellent. I love it.
Stop rambling. So why is your voice almost like a trust signal if you get it right?
Well, as I mentioned before, because your voice can be congruent or incongruent with what you're saying. And so you can create a voice that supports the message that you're having. And what I usually get people to think about is how they want to be perceived in any given communication. And trust, to be trustworthy, could be something that some people are thinking of. So then we look at the mechanics of the voice and what a trustful voice would be. So if I'm speaking a lot of time and then I never give a pause and I'll speak like this, and you won't feel like I'm very trustworthy at all. You probably think that I'm really nervous or scared about something, right? That does not display a confident, trustworthy voice. So what do? We look at pace. We slow down the pace to give space for other people. If we don't give space, then there is no trust relationship. Right? Trust is all built on a relationship and a give and take. So that's, for example, one thing we would do. The other thing is, adjusting the volume. So you're not going to, if you want to be trustworthy, you're not going to whisper really quietly to people. It's going to sound like you're trying to be secretive, or maybe you're unsure. So adapting your volume to the environment as well can be a level of trust. So those are like the mechanics of how to use your voice. And I just wanted to come back to another thing you mentioned before, Fredrik, which was about asking questions. And I think this is a great one as well for people who want to show a trustworthy voice. It's giving space for others. And I've heard a saying that was around who asks leads, I think it was, or who questions leads. And it really is that if you are giving space for other people, they're more likely to trust you. If I just speak one way to you, you're going to finish this conversation feeling unfulfilled and unheard yourself, which is not going to make you want to talk to me again, in which case you probably won't trust me that I'll hold that space for you. So yeah, just a few ideas on trust.
Yeah, another really cool thing in communication that anyone can try, we can try it now together, is called pause. And a pause can be longer or shorter, and it doesn't mess up the message. On the contrary, on stage, on the phone, even on the podcast, apparently both of us could be silent for at least a couple of seconds. Thank you.
Yeah, the pause is so important. I think it's good for you as a speaker or a communicator because it gives you time to breathe, which you need for good voice. Excuse me. It also gives you time to reflect and think about your next words. It also stops you from using those filler words, which really diminish your confidence and the way that people react to you. And for your audience, it's so important. As we're speaking, you need to give your audience space to make those connections in their brain, to absorb what you're saying and make their own thoughts. If you're constantly talking without pausing, you just do not give that space for the audience. So yeah, the pause is a power move for communicators for sure.
Yes, for sure. Many people listening to this podcast, our biggest audience is in the US, second biggest is in the United Kingdom. And for everyone else, and also many people in those two countries, English is the second language. Mm-hmm. So many people might fear to be judged because English, again, is the second language. But guess what? Second language English is far more common than British English or American English. And even if those two terms even exist nowadays.
Yeah.
Feel free to elaborate on English as a second language and why it's okay.
It's definitely okay. If it's your second language, it means you're already ahead of a lot of people who are monolingual. And I think it's worth giving yourself a little bit of a break because your brain is doing really hard things to translate your thoughts and feelings into words that make sense to the people that you're speaking to. A lot of people that I work with are speaking English as a second or third or fourth language. And one of the things I always tell them is that they should slow down. And in fact, I've experienced this myself in French. So I'm living in the French part of Switzerland.
Yes.
And to show that I'm almost fluent in French, I tend to speed up, right? We think that a native speaking person speaks very quickly, but in fact, that's the opposite of what you should do. And so if you can just slow everything down, then you can gather your thoughts, make sure the grammar is right, find the right words, and you actually sound more confident when you speak in that language. So bravo to everyone who's speaking English as a second or third or fourth language. And I would just say to us native speakers, whatever a native speaker is, be gentle, be kind, be clear. You know, I think there's a lot of misconception that the person who's working in English needs to be doing all the work. But in fact, the native or the mother tongue English speakers need to do a lot of work as well in slowing down, in simplifying, getting rid of some of those idioms that we use that aren't necessarily universal. Yes. And giving that space to the other person so that they communicate. Just because they might take a little bit longer to put their words together or they have a different accent does not mean that they don't have as much value to give.
Exactly. And the broader your vocabulary, the more you need to be conscious about simplifying things. We both tried this stint, which is called write a book. When you do, to simplify the language makes it more readable, and it doesn't make you look more stupid because you simplify the language, make it more easily comprehensible. You might make the sentences shorter, and you stay away from the most advanced words because it's not a competition. It's even the same in academia. The last few years, I've seen the academic language has also been simplified. Why? Because it has to. Because again, there are so many people from different parts of the world contributing to the written word. I would love for you to share like one of your favorite ideas from your book and mention what is the book called.
Sure. So the whole idea behind the book is that we can't wait to feel confident before we act. And that comes back to what we're talking about in terms of me wanting to help smart people get their message across. Yep. Right? They hold back because they feel nervous. So the book is called Courageous Action. Action because we have to do, we have to act. And courageous because it might not feel very comfortable at the time. And so you need to be brave to do that.
Yeah.
One concept from the book that I would like to highlight is an idea of the competence-confidence loop, which comes back to the idea of the book. So for some reason, I don't know where this comes from, we think that we should suddenly feel confident. Oh, I know something, therefore I should feel confident in communicating it.
Yes.
But in fact, the loop shows us that if we act, we build our competence. Then after we've built our competence comes confidence. And then we can act again. So in fact, the action or the building of confidence starts with action, doing a little thing. And I'm not saying get up and do a TEDx speech, right? Or even come on a podcast.
Yep.
Have a look at your own comfort zone and see what's at the edge of that comfort zone or just over, and see if you can not work towards that thing. You might be making a phone call in a different language or putting your hand up in a meeting. It could be something very simple, or offering to do a project or a presentation to the board. And then once you've done that, celebrate it.
Yep.
And then you will be able to build on it because you've already done it. And that is how we build up our confidence.
Yeah, speaking about confidence, and thank you for sharing an important part from your book there. Of course, the book will be linked in the show notes. When you like to position yourself in a room, it makes sense to prepare how you're going to present yourself. So I'm just going to say something to you, and I'll try to be cautious and take it carefully. All right, I wrote it here on the screen so I can read it, but of course you shouldn't read it, but I prepared it just to make sense, I hope. I help founders, investors, and leaders create options. Options are not only created through strategy, they are often created through communication. If people do not understand you, they cannot trust you. If they don't trust you, they will not come back to you.
Great.
Yeah, so as I'm saying that, again, you can think about how you like to position yourself in so many different ways, but prepare whatever that might be. You will always get the question like, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And the much more funnier, interesting follow-up question is like, what do you really do? Or what does that mean? Like, it's usually name, job title.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your name, job title, the short version?
Name, job title is Helen von Dadelszen. I'm a speaker and vocal coach.
Exactly. So now, again, you're in a networking meeting and someone says like, so who do you actually work with?
Yeah. So this is why I think the point you're getting to, Fredrik, is with our introductions, it's not a one and done. Usually they're in a situation where there will be some questions. And so the way I like to think of it is, how can you say something that's true to who you are, what you do, but that's going to open a conversation of questioning. Oh, that's interesting. How do you do that?
Yes.
Right. So digging deeper, because I think sometimes the labels we put on things are confusing. Speaker and vocal coach. People say, oh, well, I'm not a speaker, so I don't need your help. Right. And I really struggled with constantly evolving how I name myself, because it's really hard to find what I do, really. The broadest I can come up with is communication coach, but then people want me to write for them, and that's not what I do. So I think the most important thing is identifying, I think what you did in your introduction just now was the keys that show you some of the value that you're giving to people and what's important to you. So that piece around trust jumped out at me immediately. And of course, there's many different ways that you help people, but for you, it's most important, the trust piece. So I would recommend people to find that value that's really important to them and see if they can have an introduction for different audiences, right? Depends who you're speaking to. And something that's going to invite questions to go deeper.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the short version of what I do is I literally multiply the value of businesses. And hopefully that will trigger some like, what does that mean? Or like, how do you do that? Or like,
the question isn't the bad thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It shows interest, right? You're going to engage people with that.
Yeah, exactly. And again, think about when you meet other people, like, especially for you who love to speak more than others, to be interested, not interesting. I'm talking mainly to myself.
Yep, and that's the asking the questions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think my superpower has been for many years is questions, and that has helped me to close many deals, to solve many problems, to get people to understand their own situation better, and they understand that I also understand that situation because of the quality or level of questions. So how do you like to use questions in your communication?
So I consider myself like a giver of space, I guess, provide a safe space, whether I'm facilitating a team building or coaching a one-on-one. So giving that space. And I always lead with questions, possibly too many questions. But some of the ones that I often use is, very typical sort of coaching question. How did that make you feel? And what did you think about that? And why was that? So exactly how you say, helping other people understand themselves better by asking the questions so that they reflect.
Yes.
Because I think we go through life and we're just jumping from one thing to the next thing, even through successes. We don't stop to reflect, to celebrate, to think about what worked and
Yes.
what you could do, what you'd learn, what you could do next time for it. So I try to give that moment of pause for people, which can actually end up being quite an emotional moment for some people. They can get quite emotional. I have plenty of people crying, or celebrating, and it's not, what I find is it's not very natural for us in the professional world to do that these days, to talk and look deeper than the surface and of the doing. We're busy doing things, but not really reflecting and thinking about things. So I think I love asking questions, and in fact sometimes I have inside me, because I want to give value, I worry that I'm just asking questions and not telling people, right? But that's the role of a coach, but I'm also a trainer. So there's this balance of helping someone realize what's happening, as well as then adding in a few practical tips and tools and challenges to move them ahead.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. I'd like to share with you a term which I kind of have used the last 10 plus years, which I think in a way puts a label on what you're doing when you're training and you're coaching. I call it moaching, which is mentoring and coaching at the same time, because coaching is very often not directional, whereas mentoring is more someone you've been there, done that, got a t-shirt. You might be one or two steps ahead. And the coach who's also a mentor can ask better coaching questions, even if you're not turning into mentoring mode. And I can absolutely see how that is a very powerful way for you how to work with your clients, because you've been around the block a few turns.
Yeah, I love that. Moaching, did you call it?
Moaching, yeah.
Moaching, yeah, I love that. Yeah, no, it's definitely that, because coaches if you think traditionally of a coach being on the sidelines, they don't get involved, they don't get their hands dirty. But indeed I do. And I continue to also hone my own skills, right? In my own, for example, going on podcasts is a great exercise for me to manage my nerves, to try to be concise and engaging when I speak. So I love that, mentoring and coaching together.
So now, and one reason why I really like that, I used it a lot when I was helping people in real estate investments, because I'm helping them, but I'm so many steps ahead, so they don't need to fall into the same traps, or they can save themselves a lot of headaches. So they can also like hint a bit, but get them to do it, because ultimately also their accountability partner. So basically, people know what they should do, but we don't do it.
A lot of what I teach and coach people on is indeed that. We all know we should be slowing down. Do we do it? Not necessarily. We all know we should practice before a big speech. Do we do it? Not necessarily. So it is, as you say, a big part, the accountability piece.
Yeah, no, that's great. So the podcast name is Invest in You. How do you invest in yourself?
I invest in myself. My biggest investment at the moment is more time than money. And I think that's actually more valuable for myself anyway. And it is, at the moment, improvisational theatre. So improv, which is a form of drama or theatre where you don't have a script. And that I have gotten back into for the last 3 years. And that has been something that's on my calendar every Thursday with my troupe. And it's very difficult for something to take precedence over that. So that's really my time where I'm investing in my skills. It's very personal, because you have to trust yourself. You have to let yourself go. You have to trust the others. You have to be fun and open and creative in that moment. And I find that hugely beneficial for both my mental health, as well as building myself up as a coach, and the skills that I'm pulling on. So that's what I would say would be my investing in you, is my improvisational theatre.
Thank you for sharing that personal detail. I appreciate it. And I can also see, of course, the connection that you explain. It makes sense. And one thing I really like with improv is thinking on your feet, which is a skill in its own right. and it can be really beneficial in any kind of communication. Just because you think fast doesn't mean ... So I often throw out a question which I actually know the answer to allow myself time to think. It's really unnecessary. I'm sure you got some things that you try to get rid of yourself, which might be I'll shoot straight from the hip here. So you might have some, like when you're presenting or when you're speaking, do you have some kind of tick you're trying to get rid of? I still have too many ums. What do you do? Which is you should do less of. Confession time.
I love that. Do you know what I'm really working on? And sometimes I forget, is not to be too performative. So even I found myself doing that today, right? So suddenly you ask me a question and then, right, I'm on now and I'm going to be really expressive. And what I'm trying to do more of, especially on just taking a little video after a coaching call to share something that's come up, is not to do that, just to have that more conversational voice. Because I find that the sort of performative piece has got its place, but it's not always appropriate. And I think it can scare some people away because it's too much. So I'm trying to pull back on that. I often forget. And I think that's because I get nervous and I know that this is my performance is the way that it carries me through. Like I feel safe there. Whereas if I can relax back into a more conversational mode, often that connects better with people. So yeah, that's something that it'll be interesting to see how I've done on this podcast. I'm pretty sure I've done quite a lot of performance rather than now, as I'm speaking, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit pulled back and just having a conversation.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like the real conversation. We usually end up there one way or another in this
it's all a real
sessions.
conversation. It's all a real conversation. I don't mean to say that. I just feel like I'm a little bit more on stage or less on stage.
Yeah, no, I sometimes have like a script or whatever with questions prepared, and as soon as like the conversation is going, I just like, okay, throw it out. I don't need it anymore because we've got a real conversation, which means instead you got the full attention, which I think is much more comfortable for both of us.
Yeah.
So with that said, being a coach and talking about communication, how have we done so far today?
I think we have covered many subjects. I really hope that they resonate with your audience, who are very varied. So I know myself when I listen to podcasts, some just don't touch a chord with me and I move on. So I imagine that's the case for some. But I think it was a genuine conversation, a sharing of knowledge between people who work in similar areas and definitely have some crossover. And what's really important to me is that there's value in it for people, right? Even if it's just that one little idea that they take away, whether it's prep or the idea that, you know, you can be performing or not, or just the importance of voice. Yeah, exactly. Something for people to take away. Otherwise, what is the point in this communication? Yeah, exactly. And we also mentioned something which we started to touch upon, but it's very important and something really rare when we are communicating. It's actually to dare to go down the route of the feeling questions. So when you say that, how does that make you feel? And actually have an honest conversation about that as well. So I like to give the word back to you in terms of like, ask me anything related to this conversation, anything else before I flip back to you again. We have something in Europe called the Spanish Inquisition. It's basically they're going to ask you questions and torture you. I hope that's not how this made you feel. Not at all, Fredrik. It was really a pleasure. Maybe my question to you would be, what is your biggest communication challenge that you see coming up, either for yourself or for your clients currently?
I think it's a super simple answer. I am fully aware exactly how I should have a conversation with founders of businesses to make sure that I can understand their situation, so they might want to do some kind of business partnership with myself. But I'm finding 1 million ways to procrastinate from doing exactly that, even if that's the most highest value thing I should do at the moment.
Okay, so procrastination on not communicating.
Exactly.
Is that the idea?
Yes.
So can I challenge you to do one small action that's going to move that ahead?
Sure.
So what I like to do when I'm procrastinating on sales, for example, is just dedicate, and everything has to be in my calendar, otherwise it doesn't happen. Dedicate just half an hour, and I say I'm going to send out 20 messages on LinkedIn or whatever, process that you have, or just follow up on prospects that I've already talked to. And usually I get to the number that I've set myself and I exceed it. So just having that dedicated time really helps me, and sort of having something measurable, and then celebrating that with a nice cup of coffee or a walk with the dog or something. So
yep, I'm with you.
No more procrastination.
No, exactly. So on the note of procrastination, what do you usually do? So now is your chance to pitch who you usually work with and what you usually do, so people who can relate to that can get straight back to you and ask you more.
Sure. So I work with a real range of clients. Most of them come from the humanitarian world, so NGOs, the UN, etc. But I also have more academic and technical people who have come to a stage in their professional career where they feel frustrated by the lack of communication training or understanding that they have. And they usually come to me because they've had a terrible situation where they've walked out of the room and they thought that was a disastrous pitch or presentation, or they've been promoted to a situation that means that they're more visible and they just don't know how to do that, or they're showing up in a way that's not true to themselves. And I guess the easiest way to start working or having a look at what I do is following me on LinkedIn or YouTube. And I also last year brought out this book, which is very practical, called Courageous Action. It's available on Kindle in English and French, and on my website as well. And it's really a practical guide of moving ahead, even if you really suffer from stage fright. Very practical chapters on breathing, getting into your body, changing your mindset, how to practice and prepare efficiently. And it's really a guide that you can sort of work through. There's lots of space for reflections and things. So yeah, I would recommend people get your hands on that, or give it to a loved one who you see is holding back from getting their message out there.
Yeah, sounds like a great plan. Thank you ever so much for joining us today, Helen. Why would people come to other people's podcasts? I know 1 million answers to this question, but this is your chance to explain to other people, not to come to this podcast. We are super oversubscribed already, but why should people come to other people's podcasts?
Become a guest, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
There are 100 different reasons why. Because talking to other people can lead to goodness knows where. Actually speaking, having a real conversation with someone, especially someone from a different area of the world or a different industry, can really tease out some really interesting ideas and get your voice out there beyond the normal people that you speak to. And that was definitely one of my aims, is to reach beyond my current audience, because I know that I have a lot to share and I want to make sure that people know about these tools and techniques and are not keeping their voice small. So yeah, I would say it's nice to connect with people, and it helps your visibility, and you generally have a good conversation. So
Yeah.
win-win.
Yeah, so to highlight and underline a few things here linked to why you, the audience, should be on a podcast. Pretty much all of you know at least a few podcasters. It can be a small, it can be big, it doesn't matter. But start with the small ones and offer to spend some time with them. And most podcasts are always in a shortage of guests. So you can kidnap their audience for a second, and you will have some fun in the process. And many of them are doing it just with audio, which means you can actually be faceless should you wish that as well. And that little time will be worth so much more to other people than your usual short form content that you might put on any social media. So with that said, that's my stretch invite to everyone out there. Try to get on someone's podcast. Until next time, see you or hear you later.
Thank you so much, Fredrik.
Pleasure.